Today's episode, we have a mission to convert you to weighing yourself daily if you are trying to lose weight.
Yes, which is quite controversial. Well, you just heard a lot of people over the years say, throw away the sad step and the scale is like the worst thing and you shouldn't focus on the scale if you're trying to lose body fat. And I just think like the hypocrisy of that is like, just sets people up to even be even more frustrated. You know, that's where you go and actually try for months. I mean, inevitably you do jump on the scale and like it hasn't moved. Which is...
And it feels like the worst thing when that happens because you've been trying and then you see a number you don't want to see and you don't understand why.
Yeah.
Which is why we're going to convince you today that getting on the scale every day is a good idea.
It is a good idea. And we can remove the emotion around the scales.
Yeah.
Not completely, but we can do a lot of it by being more educated around why your body fluctuates.
Definitely. So we're going to cover the exact reasons why your weight seems to have a mind of its own, even when you're doing all the right things, and try and address some of the reasons why getting on the scale can feel a bit scary, frustrating, annoying.
Yeah.
Like for a start, I think we've all been there when you're on a weight loss journey. You get up, you're like, oh, I had such a good day yesterday, went to the gym, ate really well, get on the scale and it's up and you're like, what the actual...
Like how?
Yeah. And then you just throw in the towel. You're like, well, this is bullshit. Like I did everything right and it hasn't worked.
Yeah.
So there's that fear there where even if you have done all the right things, your work is still not going to be rewarded. And there's that constant, it's like being in an abusive relationship where like you don't know whether they're going to turn on you or they're going to be nice that day.
Yep.
So I can totally understand in a self-protective way when people are like, well, I don't want to jump on the scale every day because that's actually demotivating when I think I've been doing everything right.
Yeah. I think you just need to change the framing around it because if, you know, there's that quote of, you know, what gets measured gets managed. And if you are looking to lose weight, like the measurement that you're looking to check over is your weight. So if you just choose to ignore it, you're literally taking focus away from the singular thing that you are looking to change. And it's just like, it's like trying to save money and go, oh, I'm not going to check my bank account. You know, so you're just going to go into shops and maybe you're going to maybe try and have a budget, but it's loose. And then it's like checking your bank account at the end of the month and going, oh, I've saved no money.
Yeah.
And it's like, well, yeah, you didn't pay any attention to the actual metrics that you're trying to change.
Yeah, the way I always think about it is if there was anything else you were trying to change, you would look at the output, amend some of the inputs and see what happened to the output.
Yeah.
It's like what you learn in school in science. But then when it comes to weight, we're like, oh no, don't want to look at the output.
Yeah.
And you have so many trainers that say, oh, don't focus on the number, you know, focus on other things, which is important.
It is. Yeah.
And the scale doesn't tell the whole picture. And we can get into that a bit more later. But like you said, if you are wanting to lose weight, you do want the number to come down.
Yeah.
And equally, if you're wanting to get healthier and it's because you're in an unhealthy BMI or whatever it might be, this might give you an idea if you're going in the right direction. Even if the exact number itself isn't important, the trend is important.
The trend is really important. And I think it's where people can get stuck sometimes is that, you know, you can be taught these myths of, well, you build a muscle and that's why you build a muscle so fast, that's why you're not losing fat or you're not losing weight. And you might say, oh, I feel better or my clothes fit better. And that can happen with no scale changes. So you could start exercising, you could start eating better, and you could have a reduction in how bloated you feel on a day-to-day basis and have more energy because you're exercising more and eating better. But if you've not managed your calories, you could still be the same weight. So even though you're taking all these actions, if the ultimate goal is ultimate is to lose weight and lose body fat, then you do want to see that number come down. And if what you're doing isn't eliciting that, then it's important to address that instead of just trying to go, well, I'm not going to jump on the scales and just ignore it. Like I do feel better, but then eventually you do jump on the scales and that's where that big, I think like wave of demotivation comes. Like, what is the point? I've tried so hard. I've exercised 4 times a week for the past month and eaten all the healthy foods and I've not lost a pound.
Yeah.
And now I look at a pizza and I gained 3 pounds. And that's how a lot of, women and people feel like.
Which we will explain
Yes.
later. But there is also like this tendency of, okay, well, I'm obviously going to weigh myself, but I'll just do it once a week because then I don't have to face that every single day and have the fear of it like throw me off course and being demotivated every day, especially with, you know, the big names out there where you go to a group and you get weighed in at a weigh-in day. It just creates this false pattern of, okay, well, I'll be really, really good the day before my weigh-in and then I'll hope that I get a good weigh in. And then if it is what I wanted to see, great. If it isn't, then I was really good, and that obviously didn't work. And so you get like this doubt in yourself, shame, frustration, when actually you don't know from one data point.
You don't.
Whether you were going the right way for the whole week or not. And it affects your behavior with that, like being good the day before and then maybe getting home and being, right, I don't have to weigh myself for a whole nother week. So I've had clients that have admitted to this. They'll have what they call a cheat meal on weigh-in night because they've got a whole nother week to make up for it, in inverted commas. And it just creates this really unhealthy relationship with the scale when it's not something to catch you out. It's not something that you pass or fail at. It is a data point along your journey. And when we can just see it as a data point that's really useful to you, it becomes so empowering.
Yeah, and also understanding that, like, if your weight goes up, that doesn't necessarily mean what you're doing is wrong.
Yes.
Like, it could just be your body just fluctuating, like, in a very normal bodily process. Like, we all gain weight and lose weight all the time, and our body constantly fluctuates, and understanding that and being able to logically understand that instead of looking at it in an emotional way is really empowering.
Yeah. So I guess let's dig into some of those reasons why your body goes up and down. There's probably some that you will have heard of before. So we'll start with the obvious ones like water retention.
Yes.
Do you want to explain?
So water retention can happen through various different things. It could be you're not managing your stress properly. If you've had a really stressful day, you can spike cortisol and retain more water. If you've had a lot of sodium, like a really salty meal, had a load of sushi or carbohydrates the night before, you will hold on to more water. Now, all three of those things could cause you to retain and hold more water, but that doesn't mean you've gained fat. So you could jump up and get on the scales the next day and be a couple of pounds heavier, but that doesn't mean you've gained a couple of pounds of body fat. It means you hold on to a couple of pounds of water. Now, how would you get rid of that? For most people, you don't even need to do anything. You just go back to your normal routine and it will balance back out. Or, you know, you could be conscious of, hey, well, I had my dinner last night at 8 p.m. and I normally have it at 5 and I've woken up and I'm a little bit heavier. Makes sense. You had your dinner a bit later at night. Or, you know, you had loads of salt or sodium in a meal before. Or you were really stressed, or you didn't get a lot of sleep. And all these things, again, can cause you to retain and hold on to more water. Now, learning how to manage your stress, obviously a helpful thing for anyone who's not just on a weight loss journey, on a health journey. You know, having strategies to manage your stress is important. But I don't inherently see it like, if you eat your dinner one night at 10 p.m, like that's happened to me many times where I've worked late and I've just eaten late and gone to bed late. And it's like, it's not ideal or optimal, but it's life as well at the end of the day.
Yeah.
And if I got on the scales the next day, I'm sure it would have been a couple of pounds heavier. But again, it just balances back out.
And let's just explain why that would happen in your scenario where you do if you were to weigh yourself every single day at the same time, because you've literally got more food in your body, like, because it hasn't had chance to get processed and used and turned into other parts, you know, like used in your cells and breathed out, or pooped out. You've literally got more weight in your body. I did a little experiment on this earlier, didn't I? So I bought all my food for the next 2 days because I'm up and there's a very nice Marks and Spencer's here. So I went a little bit crazy, bought all my food from Marks and Spencer's. And I was walking back to the office and I was like, this is really heavy, this bag. So I thought, I'm going to weigh the amount of food and just see, like, if I ate this amount of food over 2 days, which I will, and I didn't go to the toilet, like, how much food is still potentially in my body? It was 3 kilos, which is like 6.5 pounds.
Yeah, 6.5 pounds.
Now, obviously, some of that does get used and processed and turned into other things. But if you haven't been to the toilet and you're like 2 pounds heavier, there's probably a good reason why. Yeah,
and that's that probably is another reason of, like, some people are constipated or not going to the toilet on a regular basis. And of course, like, that can make an impact. And actually, when people are in a calorie deficit, they can actually find that they might start going to the toilet less. So these are all things to just, like, be aware of. And the more awareness that you can have around how your body is maybe changing and reacting is super important. Like, one of the reasons that you hold on to more water through carbohydrates is that you hold on to more glycogen in the muscle. Now, if you've been in a calorie deficit, the glycogen depletes out of the muscle.
Should we explain what glycogen is?
Like stored stored energy, stored water in the muscles.
Yeah. So whereas you can have stored energy in your fat, which is more like long-term storage, glycogen's directly in your muscle. So if you wanted to go and like quickly pick up something heavy right now, it's right there where your muscle needs it, so it can access it immediately.
Yeah, and if you've been at like a calorie maintenance or a calorie surplus, your glycogen levels will basically be tapped out at like 100%. As you start to go into a deficit, this is why in week 1 of dieting, you can see like a huge reduction in weight, because not only do you lose a little bit of body fat and a little bit of muscle, but your glycogen levels deplete in your muscles. Now, if you had a really salty, high carbohydrate meal one night, you could see a huge uptake in water and jump on the scales and see like a 2, 3, 4 pound increase. I'm like, holy crap, like how has that happened? I only had half a pizza last night or some sushi, or I ate a bit later. And it can just be often because you're retaining a little bit more water. And often, you know, in that moment, people can freak out and panic. But if you actually just like work that day, eat your normal food, you probably jump on the scales the next day and it balance back out.
Yeah.
Or at least 1 or 2 days afterwards.
And I think understanding the physiological process of what's happening is really important, because if you had that sushi, let's say, your body is saying, oh, this is some carbohydrate, which is really useful for me to turn into storage for energy for my muscles. I'm going to do that. But it needs like a couple of grams of water to be able to store.
Yeah, it's like one gram of carbs. I think it stores around 3 to 4 grams of water.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So if you then think, oh God, well, I've put on like a pound or 2 pounds, what you actually can start to think is, oh, I've saved like 1 to 2 pounds worth of directly usable energy for my muscles to use. And just that reframe can help you not be negative towards seeing the numbers change when you understand what it is and why it's happening. Now, if you're not going to work out, it's probably not that much of a benefit to you. If you are working out regularly, then you think, cool, well, my pizza last night was really helpful for the workout that I'm going to do this morning. Off you go to the gym, and like you said, your glycogen stores are going to get used. And then if you were to jump on the scales again, which I probably wouldn't recommend until tomorrow, but if you did, it would be probably lower.
Yeah. And should we get into that in the sense of like, when it comes to weighing yourself, like the best time of the day to weigh yourself is first thing in the morning. So as soon as you get up, go to the toilet, jump on the scales, and that's known as your dry weight. And the more consistent you can do that, like same time each day, first thing in the morning, that's going to give you more of a consistent reading of like where your weight's at.
Yeah, and it's a really interesting point you say about the dry weight, because like the weight of my food, we all know like a litre of water is a kilo, right?
Yeah.
So imagine if you have a really big pee and then another day you don't have a really big pee, there could be a significant difference there.
Oh, there can be a huge, I mean, like you can literally drink a pint of water or a litre of water and jump on the scales and you'll weigh more.
Exactly.
So again, it's just trying to really understand like your body is going to fluctuate, and that's normal. If you're looking to lose weight, the most important thing is that it is trending down if that's the goal.
Yeah. Which I guess we should talk about at this point, because how do you even know what a trend should look like? Because people think, oh, well, if it's trending down, that means like, I don't know, half a pound a day, or no, that might be a bit ambitious.
Yeah.
But you know what I mean? Like they're expecting consistent progress, but that isn't necessarily what you're going to see because of these various factors that we're talking about.
Yeah.
So in the background, your fat stores might be going down at that consistent rate. But what we need to think about is all these other factors are almost like layered on top of that. So your fat stores are going down, but maybe you're holding on to water today. And then it still goes down on your fat stores tomorrow, but then you're stressed a bit tomorrow.
Yeah.
And then on the weekend, you completely relax. You eat less carbs, you do a workout, and all of a sudden it goes whoosh down. That isn't because you just suddenly lost weight in one day. It's everything that you've been doing that week now finally being able to be seen.
Yeah. And that's why it's important to, I mean, like it's something that we say to our clients all the time, which is like trust the process. Trust the process, trust the process, trust the process, because there's, you know, we'll go into like even more variables that can cause your weight to spike round, but actually being able to know that and trust the process and zoom out sometimes and have a look at it from a bigger picture makes such a significant difference.
So yeah, we've talked about weighing yourself at the same time every day, but also in the same type of clothes. So you don't want to weigh yourself in like a dressing gown and pajamas.
I just don't wear any clothes.
Yeah, I just wear my knickers.
Oh, right. Yeah.
But you know, some people might find that weird.
Yeah. I just wear nothing, yeah.
But then there's no variable.
Yeah, exactly. as few variables as possible.
Exactly. Yeah. But just be consistent.
Yeah, be consistent. I think that's the main thing. Yeah.
And the other thing is if you can, use a digital scale and use it on a hard floor.
Yeah.
So that you know you're getting an accurate reading. Because otherwise it can be wildly out. I even like make sure it's on the same tile in my bathroom.
Yeah,
that might be a bit neurotic.
Well, I don't know. I'm a bit like that. I put it in like the corner of the tile so I can actually, it's in this exact same place every time.
Yeah, definitely. Actually, which is a funny side note, my son is now really excited about standing on the scale because every time he gets on it, I'm like, oh my God, look how big you are. And if he doesn't put it in the right place, I'm like, oh, hang on a minute. Okay, now you can get on it. Yeah. But when do we stop going, oh my God, look how big you are?
Yeah, I mean...
And trying to be smaller. Like, maybe not so much for guys, but definitely for women, there's a tipping point somewhere in probably puberty where it stops being like, yay, you grew, to whoa.
Yeah. I mean, that's a whole separate conversation, is it, around like how you could get into that, but I don't know. I can't really remember. I'm a guy, so it's just probably keep getting bigger. I mean, I kept growing till I was 14. I think I hit 6'3" at 14.
Yeah. So and tall. Boys, like my nephew's 13 and he's like, oh, I just want to fill out. I just want to be more, because he's tall. I want to be like more built. So it is like a goal to be bigger, whereas it's not such a thing for females. Which I guess kind of brings me on to the point of like, where does your weight goal even come from? Because so many of our clients, they don't necessarily say, oh, I want to weigh what I did in high school. But when they get there, they're like, oh my God, yay, I weigh what I did in high school.
Yeah.
And that's like a celebratory thing. And I just don't know where that comes from. Often when I'm talking to people about setting that goal, I want to know why this number means something. So people will say, oh, I want to weigh like 130 pounds. And it's not because they want to weigh 130 pounds. It's because...
That's how they felt at 130 pounds.
Right. Yeah. They remember back to the time they last knew that they were 130 pounds. They felt young, energetic, fit, strong. Yeah. So is your goal 130 pounds or is it to be those things?
I think everything we do is driven by feelings. So it's just like, it's how you want to feel. Like, why do people go to the gym? Is it to look good or...
Well, to feel good,
yeah,
right?
If you look good, you feel good. Or maybe that's why, like when someone looks good, they feel good. Or do you go to the gym and you always have a big endorphin rush after? So it's a feeling. So we're often chasing feelings most of the time, if you can take it back to that. So yeah, like why is that number specifically important to you? And for other people, it might be like a BMI weight. And it could be like, well, why is that important to you? And you go, well, I want to be healthy. Well, why is that important to you? Because, well, if I feel healthy, I'll feel like I'm going to have a longer life. And it's, you can really get into people's whys around the numbers. But often, most of the time, it's like, yeah, you want to get to a number to feel a certain way. And often, like, yeah, like there is a correlation between, like, you being a healthier weight and feeling better physically and mentally. But the lines are a little bit blurred there. I don't think, like, BMI is by no means perfect. But it's not bad for general population. And people really don't like to hear that because sometimes it means either pushing past the perceived goal that you've got. And again, like, you can be like a 26, 27 BMI because you're carrying a lot of muscle. But like, I think once you start going really like north of that, like for most people, like you are starting to push into the territories of an unhealthy weight. And there will be issues that come off the back of that as well. But again, like if you're good with that and you feel good about that, like ultimately that's your choice too.
Yeah, and I think the thing with BMI is there's a range, right, of what's considered healthy. So people do often ask us, like, oh, what should I aim for?
Yeah.
So we won't ever give them a set number, but all we can say is for your health, it's recommended you should aim within this range. And often if people don't know where they should even be aiming for, I'll just say to them, like, let's just work on getting to a certain point, like maybe BMI 25. Yeah. Then you can assess how you feel. You might feel amazing at 25.
Yeah.
And then, cool, stay there. You might get to 25 and think, I didn't actually believe I could get to 25, which is why I didn't set a more aggressive goal. And I know I'll feel better if I lose another 10 pounds.
Yeah.
So it's not something that you have to decide and stick with.
Yeah.
But I think it's really important that you know why you're choosing a certain number or choosing a certain goal, because that's going to also influence your emotions about what you see on the scale.
And it gives you clarity and direction. Like, even though like the end goal can seem really overwhelming at times, like how am I going to get to this like goal of like losing 50 pounds or losing 100 pounds, if that's like kind of what this number looks like, it's still good to have direction. You don't need to like solely focus on the end goal. You can focus on the next 5 pounds or the next 10 pounds. And that's more important, but like knowing where you're going and having clarity on that is really important.
Yeah, it's almost like, when people do a fundraiser and they like have one of those thermometer things that they colour in.
Yeah.
It's almost like if you could see it as like a fun tick chart of your progress as opposed to this number that is the be all and end all of everything. it is a sign that you're going in the right direction, particularly if it is a health-based goal and you know you need to get your BMI down. Then you can see it as just like, yes, I'm doing the right things, I'm getting healthier. And it's just reassuring you that the steps you're taking are working.
It's also really important to have this in mind of, you actually don't want to diet, like quote unquote diet, or lose weight forever. So I actually, not that you want to be aggressive with it to an extent, but like you actually do want to have clarity on like what the goal is and look to get there as soon as you can. And that does put like a bit of necessity on making that happen, but it's so you don't like end up on a weight loss journey for the next 10 years. I mean, like a lot of people do end up on that. So having clarity on your goals and then like weighing yourself on a daily basis and being able to track that and measure that and make sure that you're moving towards your goals will actually help you like forcefully more get to where you want to be. And then actually look at like the next stages, which is, hey, I'm at my goal now. I don't need to quote unquote diet or lose weight anymore. Like I just need to focus on weight maintenance. And that's a place that not many people have been. But I think actually having that clarity from day one of like what your weight goal is or what success looks like for you is really important.
Yeah. And so it's not just this constant moving goalpost as well.
Yeah. Yeah. Because like the thing that I have seen with like a lot of people is that they'll either focus on like just trying to do body recomposition and focus on getting stronger, but they'll still want to lose weight. They'll still want to lose like 30, 40 pounds, or they'll like go on a diet and off a diet and have a bad relationship with the scale and a good relationship with the scale and go back and forth. But like the thing that the cost here is time. So for a lot of people, it's you're losing months or years still on this like endless pursuit of like trying to get to a goal weight, but trying all these different strategies instead of like using the one tool that can actually measurably get you to where you need to be, which is the scale. So instead of like hating the scale, it's like actually making friends with the scale and going, hey, this is how I actually measurably get to where I want to be. And if I get clarity on what that is and then measure it, and then every time, like if you just take the emotions out of the scales, yes, your weight can bounce around, and we can get into more of the reasons around that on a day-to-day basis. The scales is just like, it's when people say like I'm in a calorie deficit but I'm not losing weight. It's like, no, you're not. Like your body will tell you if you're in a calorie deficit, you will know because you will start losing weight. And with a lot of people, if you're weighing yourself daily and not losing weight, that's just your body's way of telling you you're not in a calorie deficit. So it's actually a great tool to give you like data back to say what you're doing isn't working. And instead of just getting like really frustrated around that, you can go, okay, what do I need to look at? You can start to ask questions and get curious and figure out what to do next.
And that's the key thing, is using it as an informed data point as opposed to something that should affect your emotions.
Yeah. But like I equally understand why it affects people's emotions.
Yeah.
Because,
okay, yeah, me too. I've totally been there. And what I was going to say is the way that I got around this is I just tricked myself by switching from pounds to kilos.
Okay.
Because pounds meant so much to me, because I've been trying for so long to lose X amount of pounds. I had no idea how many pounds were in how many kilos.
Right.
So when I started saying, oh, I'm now 61 kilos, it just literally meant nothing. It could just be a data point.
Yeah.
Because it didn't have emotion attached to it. I didn't understand it. So it is a big tip for me to any of my clients, if they have this really big emotional attachment to a number, or you know, getting in their minds that they always get to 150 pounds and then they get stuck and they can't get past it. We are not working in pounds anymore, my friend. We're working in kilos. Because then they don't even know when they've got to 150 pounds.
Yeah.
And believe it or not, you can trick yourself.
You can trick yourself. Yeah, no, you certainly can.
So, you know what? If you are one of those people that's like, yeah, great one, Jaymie, you just take the emotion out of it, try this, because it really does work, and it does help you see it as just another number or just another piece of information that helps you. Yeah.
So should we get into why the people should weigh themselves daily? I think it'll actually help going back more to the fluctuations too.
Yeah, okay. So do you want to explain what would happen if you didn't weigh yourself for a week?
Yeah, so if you think about some of the things that we've just spoken about, let's say you weigh yourself on Monday morning every day. You weigh yourself on Monday, you get a weight of 160 pounds, and then you go and weigh yourself next Monday and you've done all the things and you weigh 163. And now it's like, well, even just what I just said, well, that just means what I've been doing is wrong. So what's the point? You know, I worked out 3 times this week, I ate all the healthiest foods, and I've gained 3 pounds. Like, how the hell has that happened? But then the irony is, like, most people give up at that point. If you probably just went like another week and probably jumped on the scales on the next Monday, you probably would see that you've dropped like 4 or 5 pounds from that weigh-in. And that's because you weren't actually 3 pounds of body fat heavier on that Monday. You might have just had a poor night's sleep, eaten your dinner later. It could be a certain point in your menstrual cycle. Could have not been in the toilet the day before. It could be constipated, could be stressed. There's like so many reasons why your scale weight could be up. And that's why you're seeing the scales higher. And that's where the weekly weigh-ins become like a little bit of a trap, instead of what you might have seen if you weighed 160 pounds on the first Monday, is that you went 159, 158, 158, 158, 158.6. And you might have seen this like zigzag along the week. And then all of a sudden on like Monday, it just jumped up. But you might have literally jumped on the scales the next day and it spiked down again. And this is normal. Like, this is so normal.
And actually, if I see a client's weigh-ins that are exactly to the decimal point the same every single day, I'm like, I'm sorry, this is not the truth.
Yeah.
That's not how bodies work.
It's not how bodies work.
And we don't want to see it. I'm also totally guilty of being like, I know it's going to be up tomorrow because I had a glass of wine and sushi and I didn't go to the gym for 3 days. Yeah. So I just don't go on it. Yeah. But I already know that it would be up.
Yeah.
Why do we do this? I still do this if I'm in a like cut phase, if we want to call it that. And I know, but if you take it as actually, this is reassuring because I know it's going to be up because I know I did these things and I know my body reacts that way. If you can be a bigger person than me and accept it and get on the scale, it means you confirm the fact that you understand your body. It doesn't confirm the fact that you're a bad person or you fucked up. It just shows you your self-awareness is high and you understand what's happening.
Yeah. But it's also important for like, it's at the end of the day, the scale is accountability. If you're looking to lose weight, like what you just said there, and you're not avoiding the scale and jumping on it, it's probably because you do know that you have overeaten on calories. So jumping on that is accountability to say like, hey, you fell off and that's okay. Like it's trying to understand like, why did you fall off? Like, why did you go for the glass of wine at the end of the night? Maybe you were looking to relieve your stress. Okay, are there other ways that you could alleviate your stress? And it's just like, it's just getting curious and going down that path of like, hey, I'm making this happen and I'm going to keep looking for new ways and new strategies until I get there.
Yeah, and it is that not sticking your head in the sand is the only way to make progress. Yeah. And the scale avoidance is a key pattern that we see of clients that are putting their head in the sand in terms of not wanting to face up to the things they already know they need to change.
Yeah. So if you that's like weekly weigh-ins. If you were to move to daily weigh-ins, the main thing that I recommend if you're going to go to daily weigh-ins is that you have an app that can actually give you a weekly measurement. So there's one on it's not on Android, is it? Happy Scale. No. So Happy Scale is only on Apple.
Yeah.
But
the Fitbit app does it as well, though.
The Fitbit app does it as well, which you can get on both, and you can make a Fitbit account for free.
And you don't need a Fitbit.
And you don't need a Fitbit. So what it does on a Fitbit account is each weight measurement that you put in, it just gives the average at the top. And this is really good because the thing that you actually want to see come down each week is the average, not the daily measurement. Yeah. Because that's what matters. That's where you're going to see these trends. Same on the Happy Scale app, it'll give you a trend. It'll give you the average, but then it'll also give you a trend. And it actually goes one step further and like predicts your weight. So like if you keep doing what you're doing, you'll typically see that it'll spike around here and drop down around there. But it allows you to start focusing on like the weekly measurements. And you'll hear like a lot of people say, oh, weight loss isn't linear. And on a day-to-day basis, no, it's not. You're not just going to see your weight go down, 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 down every single day. But when we zoom out over a week or 2 weeks, it should be linear. If you were to draw a line from one data point to the other on an average, it should be going down. And if it's not, that's often a sign that you're not, what you're doing with your nutrition or just your strategy in general isn't one that's like eliciting consistent weight loss or fat loss. And that's fine. Like that, there's not an issue with that. Like we've had that with clients and they've been tracking the calories perfectly and they've been doing all the things. And then we've just got a little bit more curious and they like didn't realize that like the 3 cappuccinos a day they were having were 400 calories instead of 1. So they were like, oh my God, I've been eating like 700 calories a day or 600 calories a day more than I realized. And it's like, cool. Like it happens. Like,
and now we know.
And now we know. Boom. Change that one thing. Went for actually got the cappuccinos that were 100 calories, instantly started losing weight. And it feels frustrating, but like it shouldn't be because that's the lesson in that is like you won't make that mistake again, and you just become more aware for the future. And it's again, it's just your body's way of telling you, and that's where I think a lot of people can get really frustrated with the scales or with tracking food or believing they're in a calorie deficit. Versus if you just get like super objective around it, if you're not losing weight, it's because you're at calorie maintenance. That's it. If you're gaining weight, you're in a calorie surplus. If you're losing weight, you're in a calorie deficit. That's it. And like tracking your weight every single day and looking at the average objectively each week just is just the best way of seeing if you're making progress or not on your weight loss.
Yeah. Are you ready to lose 30 to 60 pounds in under 6 months without restrictive diets, countless hours exercising, or any guesswork? Well, we help women over 30 do exactly that. Lose weight guaranteed. And 5 to 10 pounds a month is the average weight loss. And that's not a cherry pick statistic. That is the average. Your weight loss results are 100% guaranteed. You will lose unwanted body fat. So apply at bodysmartfitness.com. That's bodysmartfitness.com, but only if you're a woman over 30 and want to lose 30 to 60 pounds.
And we've talked about some of the factors which might cause those daily ups and downs. But in the context of looking at a trend, it is important to note, like, probably your menstrual cycle is the one that might have a longer effect.
Yeah.
So you might have 1 week where your trend doesn't change much.
Yeah.
But then you would expect the following week for it to drop fairly significantly if you are someone affected by it. Because the average person or the average woman who has a menstrual cycle, their weight can fluctuate 4 to 6 pounds each month.
Which is like significant. I've seen like some of the clients that we've had, it's been like 1 to 2 pounds. I think the highest I've seen consistently with this lady was about 8 pounds, 7 to 8 pounds. And she went up 2 cup sizes on her boobs and like felt really bloated and heavy. And like she was a heavier lady as well in terms of like the weight that she had to lose. And as we actually got down and she'd lost over about 60 pounds, the fluctuations each month got smaller, which as proxy actually made her feel better as well. Like they didn't feel like she felt a lot worse through that week. And it's like, it's not surprising you just started carrying around like 8 extra pounds.
Yeah. And so the reason that happens is our female hormones, as ever, play havoc.
Yep.
So your high estrogen at certain points during your cycle causes water retention. That's going to be just before ovulation and just before your period. So I think people often expect to feel bloated on their period. But actually, if it's estrogen driven, it will be just before ovulation. So that's like 2 weeks-ish, maybe a bit less after your period finishes. And just before your period. So this is another reason we say track your cycle, because if you feel like, well, it wasn't even my period and I was bloated, that isn't even really when you should be expecting it. So if you start to track your cycle and you start to note when your weight stays maybe stable or goes up, you're going to then realize, what are those timeframes for you? Maybe it's 3 days before ovulation for you. Maybe it's 2 days before. But it means then when it happens next month, you're not like, oh my God, what's happened? You're like, okay, well, I'm ovulating, so I'll give it a couple of days, and if it hasn't come down then, I know I need to probably change something up.
Yeah. I think if anyone was actually interested in seeing this, if you go over to our Body Smart Fitness Instagram, we post our weight loss graphs of all of our clients, and you will see what we're talking about here, which is if you were to take the top line, the top point and the bottom point and draw a line through it, it would be linear down. But if you were to actually look at the points, it just zigzags constantly. And you actually see on some women's graphs, it's like really obvious when that's happening with the menstrual cycle, because you'll just see like zigzag down, 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 down. It's like plateau, drop, zigzag down, 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 like plateau. And it's just like, it's not looking at any of them graphs and going like, oh, why isn't it just directly down? It's like, that's what normal bodies do, and especially women's bodies through a weight loss journey.
Yeah, definitely. And it's not just the water retention as well. I think it's important to note with not just your menstrual cycle, stress as well. It's our food choices might be different. So you can still be in a calorie deficit, but if you're choosing more of those carby comfort foods, we've already talked about how carbs can affect your water retention. That's going to have another layer of your weight's going to go up. Also, progesterone reduces the motility of your gut, so it stops your muscles contracting as well. So you might not clear through your bowel movements as quickly, which is more weight within your body. It's not more fat, but it's more weight within your body. So there's all these factors that are happening at the time when you might be feeling a bit sensitive and a bit like demotivated and annoyed. And then this comes and hits you in the face as well. It's not great. But if you know why, Like, I cannot tell you how empowering it is when I hear clients make that connection and they're like, oh, well, that's just because I'm due on like next week.
Yeah.
Oh, that's okay then. And then they can just carry on doing their thing.
You can still not want it, by the way. Like, by the way, like, you all know this too, but it's just most of the clients I know, like, they don't want, if they're on a weight loss journey, they don't want the weight to plateau that week or to go up. Of course they don't, but you understand it. So like that like maybe like aggressive emotion around, or like really being upset around the fact that it's there. You can not want it to happen, but you can understand it and accept it. And I think that's like a really empowering place to be, where you're like, oh, I'm really starting to understand my body. I understand my inputs and outputs and what I'm getting. And again, it's coming back to that idea of like, trust the process. And the more you go through this, like month 1, shock to the system. Month 2, okay, I recognize this pattern more. Month 3, month 4, it's like it starts to become familiar. And then it's all of a sudden that idea of like trusting the process. Like you start to learn and get your body more, and then you just become so much more self-aware.
Yeah, and especially if you know, instead of pressing the fuck it button, you do stick with it through your period, and you know that you get rewarded at the other end because it does drop down.
Yeah.
It builds that confidence. No, next month I'm going to stick with it again as well. So yeah, period's a big one. If you are still menstruating, if you're not, then there are also plenty of other things that can be playing havoc. Yeah. So don't worry if you still think, well, I get fluctuations and I don't have a period. It's not just your body going crazy. It's literally functioning normally. And this is the other thing to remember. If your body didn't fluctuate, we'd probably be a bit worried because like it's supposed to vary up and down. Like your body's constantly trying to keep itself in a state of homeostasis. And that is actually why a lot of this stuff happens, because your body's trying to regulate your water levels, mostly so that like the concentration of things in your blood is right. So we think about our water levels. Yes, you've got glycogen in your muscles, but a lot of it is your blood. You carry a lot of weight in your bloodstream. So when you've got, for example, a really salty meal, and there's so much salt in your blood, your body thinks, gosh, I better dilute this, so it holds on to water. Yeah. So it's just trying to bring you back to a balance, bring you back to a healthy state. It's not malfunctioning, it's literally doing its job.
Yeah, so if someone were to say like, oh, because this is a question that we get, like, oh, how do I reduce water retention? And it's like, well, it would be have the exact same room, live in the exact same room at the exact optimal temperature, and have the exact same amount of water to the sip every single day, and eat all this. Like, it's just in a completely unpractical way that anyone would ever want to live and have no stress and none of this. So like, because we understand that that's not going to happen, and like a normal day-to-day life is going to have stresses and different meals and different food and slightly different amount of water, like you should expect your body to fluctuate. It's very, very normal, and there's nothing wrong with it as well. I think like some people go, oh, let's say you've got a weight goal of like 150. Like you could expect that you might drop down to like 148, but also go up to 155 at certain times and then come back down to sort of 150. And that's like normal. Like I just jumped on the scales then, didn't I? There's the scales in here. That's what we call, what type of scales would you call that? Like a analog?
Yeah. Is that the opposite of digital? I was going to say manual, but that's not right, is it?
Analog, yeah.
Old school.
But like it just said I was 14 pounds heavier than I normally am. And obviously, like, I haven't got emotions around the scales because it's not been something that has bothered me for a long time. But it's like on a carpet, it's a different type of scales, and I've got all my clothes on, and I've eaten twice today. So like, but I'm definitely not 14 pounds heavier. Maybe 6 or 7 with clothes and food in my stomach. But again, it's just like it's normal. Like I would expect to be a couple of pounds heavier than maybe I was this morning, and that's just since this morning.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So we've talked about a few of the things that are good reasons why, or like it's a valid reason why you might fluctuate. It's obviously still a valid reason if this happens, but it's things that you can mitigate more easily. So you can mitigate more easily your alcohol intake, because that makes the scale go a little bit wild.
It does.
So we all know when we've had a few drinks, you wake up with like a really dry mouth, banging headache, because you're dehydrated. So the way alcohol affects your body is it inhibits your water retention hormone, if you want to call it that. So your antidiuretic hormone. So it means that you just wee everything out. And that means actually, if you've had a heavy session, the next day you jump on the scale, you're actually probably like, oh, that's all right. Maybe I'll go for cocktails every Friday. Then when your body catches up and tries to rebalance, it goes wildly the other way.
I feel so like if I drink quite a bit the next like evening, so when I get up I feel like really like lean and light, but then the next evening I feel so bloated and heavy because my body just retains, it feels like it retains everything I eat or drink that day.
Yeah. Because it's trying to get you back to homeostasis, like we talked about before. And it also causes an inflammatory response, which I'll talk about in a minute. And that also means you hold more water in your body. And it releases cortisol as well, which also means you hold more water in your body.
And you get a bad night's sleep.
Yeah. So overall, like this is probably the only one that you have direct control over. Well, maybe your salt intake.
Yeah.
But I mean, alcohol is not your friend if you want it to be more stable. If you're fed up with seeing it jumping up and down and feeling like, there's no pattern here, it's nothing to do with what I'm doing. If you're having a glass of wine, even just one, that might be contributing to the wacky numbers.
Yeah.
And you can probably easily stop that compared to other things.
Yeah. But and to counter that as well is that like you can have a glass of wine and factor it into your calories and still lose weight, but it might just be something that causes that spike a little bit more. But again, that just comes down more to the fact of like weighing yourself daily, accepting that's part of normal thing if it's not something you want to sacrifice, and making sure the trend each week is coming down.
Yeah, and if you know that's why, and you know, it's going to go down when I get on the scale in the morning, it's not because I've had an amazing week, it's just because I'm dehydrated. Don't start celebrating that you've reached a new low. Yeah. Because that probably isn't a true low.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Which is, again, why, like, let's say you had a glass of wine on a Tuesday night, and you see that on Wednesday you've dropped down 2 pounds. On Thursday you might gain 3 pounds, but then at the average for that week, if you have actually lost weight, will show that you've lost weight. And again, that's why I think it's just really important to focus on that average.
Yeah. You mentioned there about sleep, which it's like it keeps coming up. Sleep is like the foundation of everything, and it is the time when your body's like re-establishing everything, resetting everything for the next day, including your hydration levels and your antidiuretic hormone levels. So if you are having bad night's sleep, it is going to show up on the scale.
It is, yeah. And I think this kind of ties into a little bit with like shift work. Just because I've coached like quite a lot of doctors and nurses who have shift work, and their scale weight like fluctuates more than anyone I've ever seen. And it's just the amount of stress that they're putting on their body from doing like a couple of days and nights, and then a couple of days and a couple of nights. I don't get this concept at all, by the way. Like, I've never understood why you can't just do all nights or all days for like at least.
Probably because humans don't want to just be only at night.
Yeah, but like at least do like 2 weeks of nights and then 2 weeks of days.
And that is proven to be better for you.
Yeah, just so your body, like your circadian rhythm, can actually adjust. When people are doing 3 days of nights and then they're going on and doing 3 days and they've got like no time in that middle part, but then they get like 2-3 days off, you'll see like the biggest scale fluctuations that you've ever seen for somebody, because they're just in this constant heightened state of stress. They're eating food at all different times throughout the day and then the night. They're drinking liquids at different times all the time. And then I had this lady who was a doctor, and then she had 2 days off, and after the second night of sleep, she dropped 8 pounds. And it's difficult, you know what I mean, when we come back to like trust the process, because you're going through that sort of shift work, but it just shows how much stress you're putting on the body when you're doing something like that. Now, that's obviously like a very extreme version if you're doing shift work, but even if you're just having poor sleep on a regular basis, you are going to find that you're going to feel more bloated, hold on to more water, and that's definitely going to contribute to seeing scale fluctuations more frequently. Yeah,
and let's also return to food choices, because when we're tired, we don't necessarily reach for the carrot sticks that we put in our bag. You know, that the sugary, salty, carby things are more tempting. Again, you might still be within your calories, and so if you let that ride its course through the week, you probably would still be fine in terms of seeing a trend. But if you do reach for those comfort foods and it's up the next day, it's not a surprise per se.
It's not a surprise, Again, it's just trying to manage it and just be aware that like fluctuations are normal. I know we've spoke about shift work there as well, but like I'm sure every parent that's listening as well, it's just like, I'll be lucky to get 5 hours on a good night. And it's just accepting, like, if you are trying to lose weight through that, like, just expect to see bigger spikes and losses in weight loss. And also, like, you're also probably not feeling the most rational on 5 hours of sleep if you're having it on a consistent basis, but you do have to just come down to like trust the process. And if you are eating mindfully and eating within your calories, you will lose weight, you know what I mean, over a long enough horizon of like, you know, I mean, I would say about 10 to 14 days. I don't know what your advice would be here, but
yeah, I'd say anything more than 10 days, I'd start to be questioning, okay, do we need to look at your tracking? Have you dropped your activity level without realizing?
Yeah, like that's what I would want to be looking at, because it's really important for anyone who's listening. Like, motivation gets brought up a lot. For me, motivation comes from being in motion, and it's like the actions that you're taking are yielding the results that you want. So if you feel like you're taking a lot of actions for a really long period of time, you eventually just get demotivated to keep taking those actions, versus if the actions that you're taking elicit the result you want, which is, say, weight loss, okay, you can go, okay, this has been a tough 10 days. I've not had that much sleep, but hey, I'm seeing the result I want. It's like, great, let's keep doing more of what you're doing, because it's going to allow you to keep seeing the result that you want. But if we get 10 days in and we're seeing no results, it's like, okay, well, what now? You get to 14 days, no results. It's like, okay, what we're doing is not working. It's like, that's the cue to be like, hey, we need to address our strategy and make sure that we start seeing results, because you want to get that positive feedback loop, because that, like I said, that's how you get motivated, and that makes it easier to keep doing the things. Like when you wake up and you're like, oh, I want to do my workout because I know that's going to keep helping me see the results. So I want to keep eating healthy because I'm feeling good and I'm losing weight. It just keeps driving you to keep taking more positive actions. So
to tap into that motivation, getting one of those apps and looking at the trend can really help.
It's huge, yeah. Especially if you're somebody that hates the scales or hates the thought of doing it or has an emotional reaction. Like, I think the best way, and some of the ways we try to educate our clients, is if this, like, you know, this is what I would do in coaching. If the scale weight has gone up one day, I would send them this infographic that we have, and it's got like salty meal, poor night's sleep, be in the toilet, are you on your period, constipated, just like all the different things that it could be. And if the scale weight has gone up, they have to send me a screenshot of the weight going up and then the screenshot of the infographic and tell me which one they believe it is. And now all of a sudden we're just playing detective. We're going, oh, like my calories are on point. Check. Okay. Well, I mean, I get 3 cycles. I had poor night's sleep. I haven't drank enough water and I'm in the toilet. Yeah. Cool.
Yeah.
I don't even have to say to them, well, what do you think it is? They've already self-identified it. And then it's gone, okay, cool. And then it goes back down the next day. And it's just like, we just keep going through that rinse and repeat process, playing detective with the scales. And literally over about 6 weeks, it's like the emotion around the scales is just gone, because you just really do start to understand your body.
Yeah, and I actually take that a step further. I call it the scale game.
The scale game.
Where you have to guess before you get on.
Oh, okay.
It's a bit like, I don't know what that game show is, but is it going to be up? Is it going to be down? Is it going to be the same? You have to guess before, and you have to guess why.
Yeah.
And then it doesn't hijack you with like, oh my God, it's up. What? Now I have to figure out why.
Yeah.
You already knew it was going to be up. Mm-hmm. You already knew why. You get on there and you're like, oh, funny, it's up.
Yeah.
There is no emotion left. So the scale game is super powerful for that. And it just, again, like I said earlier, it proves your self-knowledge. And if you don't know, if you get on and you didn't expect it, then that's a discussion to have or an investigation to do or a reflection of like, I didn't think I was going to be up. Like, what was it? Let me go through that list again and figure it out. Which then just means you're more knowledgeable and more skilled next time you play the game.
Yeah, 100%. I think just for this as well, we'll just do it. If anyone is actually listening and wants to get that infographic, if you just DM at Jaymie Moran the word scale in capitals, we'll just send you that infographic, and then at least you can put that on your phone. That's what we get our clients to do, is like make a body smart folder, put these images in, and it's just like, it just allows you to play detective.
And you can play the scale game.
And you can play the scale game in a really effective way, so you don't have to hate the scales and you can actually understand your body. And that's, you know, when people say knowledge is power, I'm like, when it's applied knowledge is power. And it's like, but by learning the knowledge around your body and your scales, it does give you empowerment.
Actually, that's a really good point, because you can know in your head, water retention. But unless you've actually been through the process of thinking about your body retaining water and what happens and what the outcome is, it just feels like, I don't know, something that happens to other people.
That's what I mean. A lot of people say that, like, knowledge is power. I mean, I'm like, I know a lot of smart people who have not done anything with their lives. And it's like, so like, our knowledge alone isn't enough. It's like, there has to have the applied knowledge. The amount of people that go, oh, I know what I need to do. All right, we'll do it then. And there is a difference. There's a very big difference between knowing what to do and actually doing it. And again, going through that process of knowing what to do and then doing it and getting that evidence behind you, and that it's a skill. It is really a skill to go through that process.
Definitely. And that leads us into what happens at the end of that process. So you are doing your average scale, you're getting every week a little bit closer to your goal, you get to your goal. Now what? Do you just never weigh yourself again?
So it depends. Like, so people who have been shown to successfully lose weight and keep it off do have a way of measuring and tracking somehow. So for some people, they jump on a scale every day still. For some people, they take progress photos and are really good at keeping a gauge on that or take measurements. For other people, they continue to track the food. And it's been shown that you need to do this for about 3 years after you've actually hit your goal. You have to keep some sort of measurement tool in place. And again, some people are able to just go to like once a week weigh-ins or once a month. Some people do it every day still. Some people track the food. And again, like it's personal preference, to be honest. Like we don't have like a sort of one size fits all approach. But the reason is like most people will rebound, and you just need some way of being able to track or measure to say like, hey, have I just started being a little bit more loose or lax? And instead of like waiting for that to become like, oh, I've gained 20 pounds. How did this happen? It's like, oh no, you had this goal. Okay, I can fluctuate a bit, but like, hey, I've gone 5 pounds up now. And it allows you to address the issue faster than getting 20 pounds up or 30 pounds up and then going, shit, how did this happen?
Especially if you're one of those people like me who likes to ignore a problem until it's too big. Yeah. And then you know at 5 pounds that your clothes aren't fitting properly, but you're not going to jump on the scale because you don't want to see the evidence.
Yeah.
And so you wait till it gets really bad. So if you've got that routine where every Saturday or whatever it is, you take a picture or you get on the scale, it doesn't catch you out.
Yeah, this is like a good analogy for it. I just think like with financing, let's say you get paid a set amount of money each month. Like a lot of people will budget and go, right, I've got a certain percentage for bills, a certain percentage for savings, and a certain percentage for, myself and what I want to spend on. And if you stuck to that budget and those percentages, you would always have money for your bills, always have money for your savings, and always have money for yourself. And if you made more money and stick to those percentages, they would still all be the same, and all the pots would stick. So it's like, imagine you got to like a savings goal and then just went, oh, I want to maintain everything I've got, but then just got rid of the percentages, and then just started spending loosely without tracking or looking at anything. You would expect everything to just go haywire. And it's the exact same to an extent, unless you've done it for years and years and years, because then it just becomes part of like who you are and your identity. So that's why that 3-year rule is kind of there, is that if you've been able to maintain your weight or like maintain close to your weight goal for 3 years, that's just who you are now. Like it's very unlikely that you're just going to revert and gain 50 pounds.
Because the way you live your life now is in alignment with
like your habits, lifestyle, behaviors, how you think about food, how you act around food, how you act on vacation and holidays and parties and Christmas. You've been through 3 lots of all of them many times. And like how you act now is just how you act. And that's like people who you will go, oh, they're really good with money. Well, they've probably just had habits and behaviors that have been really good with money for years. And now it's just like a default for them. And I think that's just an important thing to keep in mind, because nobody wants to lose like 30, 40, 50 pounds and get to their goal only to gain it back again. And I think it's just being mindful that like, yeah, you do still want to have some way of measuring and tracking it. It doesn't have to be the scales, but it wants to be something.
Yeah. So what we would always say with our clients is when you get to your goal weight, let's just talk about a goal range rather than a set goal weight, because of what we've talked about, right? Your weight's going to fluctuate. So I wouldn't say, oh, my goal weight is 60 kilos. And then if one day I jumped on and it was 61, that I would be upset. I'd say like maybe my goal range is 59 to 61.
Yeah.
Anything within that, that's 4 pounds fluctuation. Like that's most days accounted for.
Yeah.
And then we would say to them, right, for 2 months, we want to see that you can keep your weight around that range whilst you're tracking your food still. So you understand like, what do I need to eat and how do I need to move to keep it within that range? So you're honing your skills of maintenance.
Yeah.
And then we would say, okay, now let's take away one of the measurements.
Yeah.
So we're going to take away the tracking food, because more people are happy to weigh themselves once a day than track every single thing they eat for the rest of their lives.
Yeah.
So we'll take away tracking your food and let's see if you can still keep within those 4 pounds. And we'll do that for a couple of months.
Yeah.
And if you can do that now, you're in a pretty strong position.
You're in a pretty strong position. And again,
keep doing that.
It's like if you do take away the tracking the food and start eating more intuitively and you see the scale start to go up, that just shows you like, oh, you're maybe not as aware around portion control as you need to be, or your nutrition. It's like, okay, let's just start tracking again and figure out where you went wrong. And then it's just like rinse and repeat process. And that's it. Like if you just objectively look at it all, they're just skills that you're trying to learn. And people who are probably like really good at like managing the weight and have never really struggled with it, they probably just got like really good eating skills and habits and behaviors as kids, and they've just got them skills now, and it's just easy for them to keep on top of it. And it's like all you're doing is just trying to learn some of them skills to become more in tune with your body, to know your hunger and fullness sort of cues, and to understand food and portion control a lot better.
Yeah.
And it can all be learned, and it's not an impossible like place that only a certain select amount of people live. Like you can 100% get there too.
Yeah, and it's also, like you said earlier, not a one-size-fits-all thing. So it doesn't have to be, oh, I have to learn how to make peace with the scale and weigh myself every day forever. You can learn to assess yourself in the mirror or with photos or with measurements or by how your clothes fit.
Yeah.
But what I would say is the scale's probably the only one that is objective.
Yes.
Because you can look in the mirror, and if you are having a bit of a crappy day, you can look exactly the same as you did yesterday, but pick yourself apart. Most of us.
Yeah.
Equally, if you are a bit puffy because you had a salty meal or you're a bit bloated because you're due on your period, you could look at yourself in the mirror and be a lot less happy with yourself than perhaps what a scale number might tell you, because it's just an objective number.
Yeah.
So it is important to know that there are other options, but it's also important to know that this is the one that you can really bring it back to the science and the data and understand it. And it's not your brain getting in the way and adding layers of emotion and context and maybe making things feel worse than they are.
Yeah. Which is, I think, is important, because like emotions do get in the way sometimes, especially on people's weight loss journeys. And it's nobody's fault. Like if you're like trying really hard and you're not seeing the scales go down, it's like, it's like the saying that we say all the time, isn't it? It's like not necessarily your fault, but it is your responsibility. So like if you have got a goal of wanting to lose weight, like the strategy that you've maybe trying, like that may not be your fault. Like you may have got given that off a friend, seen something on social media and gone, oh, I'm going to give that a try. Okay, like you give it a try, and if it didn't objectively work because the scales are saying you haven't lost weight, that's cool. You just gotta have that mindset of like, I'll just try again. That's obviously shown me like what I've done there hasn't worked, and I need to go back to the drawing board and find something different.
Yeah. And if you do find the scales haven't worked, or not scale, the process hasn't worked that you've tried, or you were maintaining and then it started to creep up, you know that you can go back to whatever worked before.
Yeah.
If you've successfully lost weight, you know what you did worked, so you can go back to what you did before. But you only know to start that process if you are, like you said, jumping on the scale every now and then and checking. And the other thing is, if you do know what your starting point is and what your goal is, you can then feel really confident, right? I know I've put on 6 pounds because I went on vacation and I really enjoyed it. I know how to lose 6 pounds. I know roughly how long it's going to take. And you feel more in control. It's not just like, oh, I feel a bit gross because I went a bit over the top on holiday and I'll just start eating a bit healthier. And then 6 weeks later, you still feel a bit rotten.
Yeah.
You're actually taking control of the situation. And before you know it, it will be done.
Yeah, I mean, we've had it with loads of clients have come back from like vacation or holiday, and they've jumped on the scales and it's been like 7 pounds up. And it's like, yeah, you just got in like the best shape of your life before this holiday. All your glycogen levels were depleted. You let yourself a little bit more loose. You probably were still active while you're away. You come back, you maybe bloated off the flight. Like, that's another thing we haven't spoken about, like flying, for me at least, like balloons me. I feel horrible after it and really dehydrated. And then like I've seen some clients like lose 7 pounds in 7 days because it's just been like so much bloating and water retention. They've just got back into a normal routine, better sleep, no alcohol.
Bowel movements, always flights that affect me with that as well.
So, you know, it's just, and again, you do that once, like you come back from a trip, normally people feel horrendous. Oh my God, I can't believe I've gained 7 pounds. How has this happened? But if you actually just get straight back on track, get back into your routine, a week later, it's gone, it's like, huh. And then the next trip comes around and you're like, oh, I feel a bit groggy and whatever else, but you know, just get back on track and just keep going.
Yeah.
You know, just keep taking the steps that you have been.
So basically, the top 3 things to do if you're fed up with the scale going up and down is stay consistent, do the things, drink enough water, because water retention is at the heart of all of this. And if you drink more water, weirdly, you'll retain less of it because your body won't be like, oh, we have to hold on to every water molecule. And manage your stress, because we kept saying earlier with those other influences, stress has a huge influence on your water retention. So actively managing your stress each day.
Yeah. And then making sure you've definitely got one of those apps that like, because a lot of apps you can track in and it just allows you to track daily. But like you want to be able to see that objective average at the top or at the bottom, wherever it's shown on the app, just so you can see it. You can zoom out and go, hey, is my weight going down on average each week? And if it hasn't been for the last sort of 2 weeks, that's a good cue to be like, hey, what I'm doing is not working, and to go back to the drawing board. So just making sure like the app or however you're tracking your weight, even if you're manually checking it down, just doing the average for each week.
If this is something that you've been really struggling with, then it is one of the key things that we help women overcome really early on in their weight loss journey with us, so that it's not like cluttering up your headspace when you're trying to focus on doing the thing. So our coaching program is one-on-one. You'll work with a dedicated real life human coach who will work through that scale game with you, work through all the things that might be affecting your weight on a day-to-day basis, and help put you in the driving seat to keep that trend coming down.
And on average, our clients lose 5 to 10 pounds a month, and that's why we're able to guarantee that you will lose 30 to 60 pounds in under 6 months, and we'll teach you, most importantly, how to keep it off.